I'm Nora Easton, and this is how I reclaimed my life. Back when I was 22 years old, I lost both my legs to an IED explosion in Kandahar, Afghanistan. I remember waking up in a military hospital, the fluorescent lights harsh and unflinching, and the dull weight of pain pressing against every inch of me. I looked down, and where my legs had been, there was only emptiness under the blankets. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst came later, when I rolled off the plane at home, sitting in a government-issued wheelchair, and my family looked right through me. Like I was already gone. Like I had died over there, and this was just some ghost coming back to haunt them. That was 8 years ago. The sting? Still there. But it turned into fuel. And that fuel? It built the life I have today. Where I come from. I grew up in a small town in Ohio called Maple Hollow. One of those places where everybody knows your business but pretends they don't. The kind of town with peeling paint on white picket fences and more gossip than kindness. We lived in a faded blue 2-story house with a sagging front porch and a yard that was more weeds than grass. Nothing special. That house wasn't a home, not for me anyway. Not when you're the kid who's always last to be noticed. My mom, Karen, was thin and wiry. Always had dark circles under her eyes from working double shifts at the diner. She fussed over my little brother like he was spun from gold, but I was just there. My dad, Rick, was a mechanic with grease permanently under his fingernails and a voice that never softened. Not for me. And then there was Sean, my little brother. Blonde, tall, charming, and the apple of their eye. Sean was the kid who scored the winning goal, who got cheered at school assemblies, who had a line of girls giggling by his locker. Me? I was the shadow he never noticed. I remember being 10 years old, standing in the kitchen, holding up my essay that got an A+. Mom, look, I said, excitement fluttering in my chest. Karen glanced at me from the counter where she was slicing the crusts off Sean's sandwich. That's nice, Nora, she murmured, before turning back to Sean. You're going to be amazing in tomorrow's game, baby. I stood there, the paper shaking in my hand, and I felt small. Invisible. Dad wasn't much better. I once built a birdhouse in shop class. Sanded it smooth, painted it sky blue. I brought it home, proud. He nodded once and muttered, good effort. But 5 minutes later, he was clapping Sean on the back because he scored 2 goals that day. By high school, I'd stopped trying. I retreated to my room, a cramped box with peeling wallpaper and a desk covered in books. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Austen. Stories of people who escaped, who mattered. I'd stare out the window at the neighbor's dogwood tree and dream about running away. Sean would barge in sometimes, swiping pencils from my desk for his homework. You're wasting your time with that junk, he'd sneer. Mom's voice would float up the stairs, half-hearted. Sean, leave your sister alone. But he never did. He'd laugh and saunter off, leaving me to pick up the mess. The day I left. When I turned 18, I was done. The Army recruiters came to school wearing sharp uniforms, talking about purpose and pride and seeing the world. I signed up that day. I didn't tell my family until the papers were in front of me. You're throwing your life away, Mom muttered, folding laundry without looking up. Dad didn't even blink. Your funeral, he said, flipping a page in his newspaper. Sean laughed from the couch, feet propped up on the armrest. You? In the Army? You can't even carry groceries. I stood there, fist clenched, throat burning, but I didn't cry. Not in front of them. Watch me, I said. And I left. War made me stronger, until it didn't. Basic training was hell. But I loved it. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who saw me, who respected me. My drill sergeant barked at everyone the same, and when I crossed the finish line last, panting and half dead, my teammate, Carmen, clapped me on the back and said, "You've got guts, Easton." I did. And it felt damn good. Afghanistan was dust, heat, and danger. We lived on adrenaline and instant coffee. My squad became my family. Carmen, Velasquez, Reggie. We had each other's backs. Then one day, it all exploded. Literally. We were on patrol outside Kandahar, joking about the slop they served in the mess tent, when the world tore apart. An IED, hidden under loose gravel. 1 second we were laughing. The next, I was flying through the air. Then nothing. I woke up in a hospital bed at Bagram. Tubes in my arms. Pain in every cell of my body. My legs, gone. You're alive, soldier, a nurse said softly. I nodded. Yeah, I whispered. I guess I am. Coming home isn't always a rescue. Rolling back into Maple Hollow was worse than getting blown up. Karen stood on the porch when I wheeled up the ramp the VA installed. She looked at me like I'd tracked mud through the living room carpet. Oh, Nora, she sighed. Not grief. Not pride. Just inconvenience. Dad barely looked up. Why'd you have to get yourself hurt? He muttered. Sean lounged on the couch, soda can in hand. He smirked. Hey, wheels. Need a push. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. I'm fine, I said, wheeling past them. The doorway to my old room was too narrow. I sat in the hall staring at my bed, at the posters I'd never taken down. I slept on a fold-out cot in the living room that night while Mom whispered to Dad, "She's so dramatic." The next morning, I packed a duffel bag, a few clothes, my notebooks, a photo of Carmen and me from training, both of us grinning like fools. I'm leaving, I told Dad, who was nursing his coffee in a chipped mug. Where you going? He asked without looking at me. Anywhere but here. Sean laughed. Good luck. Karen didn't say a word, didn't even stand up. Mike, the cab driver, helped me load my chair into the trunk. As we pulled away, I didn't look back. Chicago was my clean slate. I landed in Chicago because the bus ticket was cheap, and the city was big enough to get lost in. My first apartment was a studio above a deli. The radiator clanked all night, and the window leaked when it rained. But it was mine. I spent my days writing. Nights too. I poured every ounce of rage, grief, and stubborn hope into stories. Stories about broken people who didn't stay broken. I posted them online. People read them. You get it, one comment said. This saved me, another. By the time I was 27, I'd published my first book, Fragments of Fire. It was raw and messy and real. It hit the top of Amazon's bestsellers list in 6 months. I made more money than I ever thought possible. I cried staring at my bank balance. Not because of the numbers, but because it meant I could finally take a breath. From invisible to unstoppable. I worked from coffee shops, my wheelchair parked by a window, my laptop humming. Tara, a barista with blue hair and a crooked smile, slipped me free lattes. You're that writer, right? She said one day. I guess I am, I replied, grinning. By 30, I had 2 books out. A movie deal in the works. I moved into a penthouse overlooking the lake. My name was on lists. Forbes. Time. People called me fearless. Brave. But none of that mattered as much as knowing I'd done it without them. When the past comes knocking. They found me again in 2025. It was a sunny October afternoon, and I was signing books at a store in downtown Chicago. The line snaked around the block. Then I heard her voice. Nora. Karen stood there. Smaller than I remembered. Gray hair tied back. Rick was behind her, hands stuffed in his pockets. Sean was nowhere to be seen. What do you want? I asked, my pen frozen mid-signature. It's Sean, she said. He's in trouble. Drugs. Gambling. He lost the house. Rick cleared his throat. We need your help, kid. I stared at them. The people who told me I was worthless. Who laughed when I left. I gave you $500 last year, I said quietly. That's all you'll ever get. He's your brother, Karen pleaded. The brother who called me wheels while I bled? I said. No. They didn't stop. Emails. Calls. Showing up after book signings. He's going to die without help, Karen sobbed once outside a cafe. You chose him over me every day, I said. Now live with it. Letting go was freedom. I blocked their numbers. I stopped checking email. I tweeted once, late at night. Sometimes you have to cut the rope before it drags you under. It went viral. People called me brave. Some called me heartless. But I felt free. The life I built. My penthouse was glass and steel. Clean lines. A view of the skyline like a crown on the city. I'd roll out to the balcony some nights and breathe in the cold air, knowing no one owned me. Hollywood bought the rights to Fragments of Fire. They cast an actress who wasn't disabled, but I made them hire a consultant who was. My latest book, Unbroken Threads, climbed the charts. Tara managed her own cafe now. We still had coffee every Tuesday. It was never about revenge. People think I wanted revenge. I didn't. I wanted peace. And I got it. But the best part? Knowing that every word I write helps someone else stand up, whether they've lost a leg or a dream. At a talk in New York, a woman named June hugged me and whispered, "Your story gave me a reason to stay." That's what matters. And now? I'm 30, richer than I ever dreamed. Respected in rooms I was once invisible in. I don't know where Sean is. I don't ask. Karen and Rick stopped trying. Some nights, I remember the girl holding the birdhouse. The girl no one clapped for. She's still here. And she's unstoppable.